They went searching, didn't they, wandering through empty streets and hollow hearts, hoping to find a reflection of you and someone else. But there's the rub: what they had with you wasn't ordinary, wasn't replaceable, and now they're cursed with the knowledge that nothing, no one will ever measure up. You were the spark they didn't understand, fire they couldn't tame. They thought they could walk away, that life would offer them a second chance at magic. But magic doesn't work like that, does it? It's not something you find twice. Now they sit in the silence of their own making, haunted by the echo of your laughter, the warmth of your presence. They held the world in their hands and didn't even realize it, and that will be their torment forever. They can chase, they can search, they can yearn, but they'll always fall short. Because what you brought to the table wasn't just love, it was an experience, a connection, a once-in-a-lifetime kind of bond. The curse isn't just that they lost you, no, it's that they know they'll never find another you. It's waking up every day with the ache of what they let slip through their fingers. It's watching their life play out in muted colors while yours becomes a masterpiece. They underestimated the gravity of what you were, what you gave, what you stood for. They thought the grass would be greener, the love would be easier. But all they found was emptiness masquerading as fulfillment. They'll keep pretending, of course, smiling through the regret, laughing through the pain. But late at night, when the world is quiet, your name will haunt them. Your absence will weigh heavier than any presence ever could. They'll replay the moments, the ones they dismissed, the ones they took for granted, and every replay will be a dagger. They might try to numb, bury, or avoid it, to forget what they lost. But curses don't go away. Every time they look at someone else, they'll compare, and every comparison will make them feel worse. Hollow, angry, and frustrated because the sun isn't like a flickering candle. They treated you like an ordinary stone, and now they're left looking through pebbles for a shine that doesn't exist. This curse is poetic, isn't it? The very thing they sought, freedom, excitement, something better, is now the chain that binds them. Regret, longing, and the realization that they had everything and threw it away. They'll remember your kindness, patience, and love, and they'll hate themselves for not cherishing it. They'll remember your strength, light, and authenticity, and they'll hate the void where it used to be. You didn't just touch their heart, you reshaped it, and now that it's empty, it'll always have your mark on it. They may try to fill it, but nothing will ever fit quite right. They will look through old pictures, messages, and special times, stuck in time, and the curse gets stronger with each scroll. What if I worked harder? What would have happened if I stayed? What if I hadn't been so blind? But the universe doesn't give do-overs. They're what will echo into eternity, unanswered and unresolved, while you move forward unburdened, thriving. They might see you someday, glowing, happy, satisfied, and it'll sting worse than any punishment they could have imagined, because you'll be a vision of everything they lost, everything they'll never have again. You were the lesson they weren't ready to learn, the gift they didn't know how to keep. Now they have to deal with the damage. How empty it is, the sorrow. The curse of knowing they tried to replace you with facades and distractions, thoughts, but they know deep down that they'll always know you were unique. You were the star in their night sky, the anchor in their storm, the heartbeat in their chaos, and now they're floating, starless, lost. The universe doesn't forget, and neither will they. Every failure, every heartbreak, and every hollow connection they experience will be a reminder. This isn't what I had with them. They'll tell themselves stories, craft excuses, and try to justify their decisions. But the truth doesn't bend to the ego, and the truth is they lost the best thing that ever happened to them. Let them pretend, let them act like they're fine, but you and I both know the truth always seeps through the cracks. Their smiles are forced, their joy is forced, their lives are hollow. This curse isn't about payback, it's about balance. They created this world with their actions, their choices, their blindness, and now they have to live with it. You, on the other hand, are free from their chaos, their limitations, their inability to see your worth, free to live, to love, to grow. Their curse is their problem, not yours. Let them carry it, let them feel the weight of their mistakes while you rise unburdened. Untouchable, unstoppable, their curse is knowing they had it, everything, and lost it. Your blessing is knowing you survived, thrived, and became even greater than before. They'll sit in their silence, won't they? A silence so loud it drowns their thoughts, fills the void they tried so desperately to ignore. That's the real curse. An unending dialogue with the memories of you. Every glance at their empty spaces will scream your name. They'll replay their mistakes over and over like a broken record in their minds, and no matter how they try to skip past it, that scratch on the vinyl keeps pulling them back to the course of regret. You were their favorite song, and now all they hear is static. They will scroll through their phone, stare at your photos, and feel the weight of 1,000 unsaid apologies, but their ego won't let them send that message, won't let them say it all is wrong. And so the regret festers, growing like a shadow that looms larger every day. They thought they could move on, replace you with something shiny, something new, but all they found were hollow laughs and fleeting thrills. Nothing matches the depth you brought, and they'll be reminded of that emptiness for the rest of their days. Every holiday, every milestone, every quiet moment, they'll wonder what life could have been like with you. But that's the thing about loss, it doesn't just haunt your nights, it slips into your mornings, your afternoons, your every waking moment. Their curse isn't just regret, it's the realization that the life they're living now is a shadow of what it could have been. You were their light, their guide, their sanctuary. And now they're stumbling in the dark. They'll try to distract themselves, throwing their energy into fleeting pursuits. But no matter where they run, they'll find your absence waiting for them. It's in the things they used to share with you, in the places that now feel hollowed, in the laughter that feels forced. They'll pretend to be fine, of course. That's their game now, masks upon masks, layered with fake smiles and shallow conversations. But behind closed doors, that's where the truth lives, that's where the curse breeds. They'll hear your name in passing, catch a glimpse of someone who reminds them of you, and feel their heart skip a beat. But it won't be you, it will never be you again. And that realization will sting like the sharpest blade. This curse you see is poetic. It's justice served not by your hand, but by the world itself. They'll drown in their what-ifs, tangled in the web of their own choices, caught in the trap they set for themselves. Even in their sleep, you'll haunt them. Dreams of what was, of what could have been, will play on repeat. And when they wake up, the cold reality of your absence will be the cruise. All they'll try to find solace in others, but every connection will feel like a hollow echo of what they had with you. They'll search for that spark, that fire, but all they'll find is a faint glow. Nothing burns as brightly as you did. People around them will notice the shift, won't they? The forced smiles, the lingering sadness in their eyes. They'll wonder what's wrong, but they won't ask, and so the curse remains their secret, their burden to bear alone. Their friends might even warn them, you messed up with the best thing that ever happened to you. And while they laugh it off inside, they'll know it's true. The truth, that is a relentless companion, always whispering in the background. They'll try to convince themselves that they're better off, but deep down, they'll know it's a lie. They had the real thing, and they let it slip away. That's the curse, knowing they'll never taste that kind of love again. When they see you thriving, glowing, moving forward without a second thought for them, it'll burn. It'll be the kind of pain that words can't capture, a hollow ache that echoes in their chest every time they think of you, and they will think of you every single day, whether they admit it or not. You've etched yourself into their soul. You are the shadow. They can't outrun the memory. They can't erase the what if. That will follow them to the end. They'll watch you from afar, see your joy, your success, your radiance, and with every achievement of yours, the regret will grow. Because they'll know they weren't just a chapter in your story, they were the ones who couldn't keep up with your greatness. The curse will stay, knowing that they, in ways they can't explain, it's not just the loss, it's the knowing they could have had it all with you, knowing they threw away the kind of love people search lifetimes for. Let them carry that weight. It's theirs to bear now, while you're free to rise, to shine, to live a life that's bigger and brighter than anything they ever dreamed. Their curse will be their legacy, the invisible chain that ties them to their mistakes. But your legacy, that's a phoenix rising from the ashes, a story of victory, resilience, and unshakable strength. And that, my dear, is the ultimate twist in this tale. While they wither in the shadow of their regrets, you bloom in the light of your freedom. Their curse is your victory, and the world couldn't have written it better. Let them drown in their regret, their desire, their empty search. That's their story. Now yours is one of victory, of resilience, of joy, and the best part, you don't need to lift a finger. Their own choices were the authors of their downfall. The curse was self-inflicted. They'll keep looking, keep chasing, keep trying, but the truth is their search will always lead them back to you, to the memory of what they lost. So let them live with their curse while you live your life free, radiant, and successful. And that, my dear, is the ultimate win. There was a time when you gave everything you had, your patience, your kindness, your loyalty. You put others first, thinking it would be enough, but slowly you began to see the cracks, the manipulation, and the lack of appreciation. They tried to make you believe you were replaceable, that your worth was tied to their whims. They convinced you that you were just a part of their narrative, a piece that could be swapped out when they got bored or frustrated. They took your presence for granted, never realizing the value you brought into their lives. At first, it stung. The thought that they could move on, replace you like you were just another chapter in a book they could toss aside. But something inside you began to shift. You started to realize your worth was never meant to be tied to anyone's perception of you. You weren't a placeholder, a backup, or a convenience. You were more than that. You were someone who gave love and loyalty without expecting anything in return, someone who was irreplaceable. They tried their best to fill the gap you left behind when you walked away. They found others to fit into the empty spaces of their life, but no one could fill your shoes. They thought they could move on as if nothing had changed, but the void remained. The people they brought in couldn't replicate the bond you had with them. They tried to manipulate, control, and twist things. But the truth was, they couldn't find anyone like you. Someone who cared deeply, someone who didn't play games, someone who understood the power of true connection. As time went on, they saw it. They saw the mistakes they made. The person they tried to replace, the one they took for granted, was irreplaceable. You were the strength they never realized they needed, the constant they never appreciated. When they looked around at their new replacements, they saw nothing but disappointment, because none of them could bring the same energy, the same authenticity, the same realness that you did. You were never just another face in the crowd. You were the one who made things better, who brought clarity when things were clouded. You were the one who made them laugh when they were down, the one who pushed them to be better, the one who helped them see things from a different perspective. They tried their best to move on, to replace you, but they failed. The gaps were too big, the absence too noticeable. They thought they could find someone like you. They couldn't. They tried to find a substitute for your kindness, your loyalty, your passion, but what they didn't understand is that you weren't just someone they could replace. You were one of a kind. You walked away because you finally realized that you deserved better than their games, their drama, and their lack of appreciation. And as they struggled to fill the hole you left behind, they came to the painful realization. They never truly understood how irreplaceable you were. Now, you stand taller, stronger, and wiser. You've learned that your worth isn't defined by anyone else's inability to appreciate it. You moved on and found the strength to keep going, while they're left chasing shadows, trying to fill the space you once occupied. They may have tried their best to replace you, but no one can ever replace someone as genuine, as strong, and as unique as you. You were never meant to stay in their broken narrative. You were meant to rise above it, and now that you've walked away, you've shown them exactly how valuable you were all along. The truth is, they didn't just lose you. They lost the best part of themselves when they tried to replace you. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize their worth, and it's often the hardest lesson to learn. For so long, you gave yourself to someone who didn't deserve you. You gave them your time, your trust, your love, believing that your loyalty would mean something. You thought they understood the value of what you brought to the table. But over time, you began to see it. Their actions didn't reflect the love you gave. They took you for granted, believing they could walk all over you because they thought you'd always be there. You see, they thought they could push you to the edge, test your patience, and even take your kindness as a weakness. They thought you would never leave because they saw you as an option, a part of their routine that could be swapped out or discarded when it suited them. But they didn't know you. They didn't know what you were capable of until the day you made a choice to walk away. The moment you chose yourself, you became more than just a part of their life. You became a lesson they were never prepared to learn. They tried to replace you. They tried to find someone who would fill the space you left behind, someone who would give them the same attention, the same loyalty, the same care. But no one could compare. No one could be you. At first, they thought they could move on easily as if your absence wouldn't matter. They filled their lives with distractions, with people who pretended to be what you were, but they quickly realized the truth. You weren't just a comfort or a convenience to them. You were a force, a presence, a strength they never truly understood until you were gone. They thought they could replace your support, your insight, your wisdom, and your compassion, but they couldn't. The new people they surrounded themselves with were only shadows of the real thing. They tried to mimic your energy, your style, your authenticity, but they failed miserably. No matter how hard they tried, no one could hold the space you did. No one could bring the same value, the same depth, the same understanding. As time went on, they began to feel the emptiness. They started to see how their world was collapsing, how nothing felt the same without you. The laughter, the deep conversations, the way you made them see the world differently. It was all gone. They tried to replace you with temporary fixes, but the truth remained. You couldn't be replaced. And you moved on. You found peace in walking away. You found strength in realizing that you are irreplaceable, that your worth isn't something that can be duplicated or replaced by anyone. You became stronger, wiser, and more aware of your own value. And as they look around at the empty spaces you left, they now know it for themselves. They thought they could replace you, but in reality, they only lost themselves. They tried to move on, but they'll never find another you. You were the one who gave them love without strings attached, the one who believed in them when no one else did, the one who stood by their side when the world seemed against them. You were the strength in their weakness, the clarity in their confusion, the constant in their storm. They may have tried their best to replace you, but what they didn't realize is that they were never looking for someone to replace you. They were looking for someone who could live up to the incredible person they let go of, and that's something no one will ever be able to do. And now, as you continue to walk your path, thriving and growing, they sit with the reality that you were irreplaceable all along. The void you left behind isn't one they'll ever be able to fill. There was a time when you believed in them with every piece of your heart. You gave your trust, your loyalty, and your love without hesitation. You sacrificed so much for their happiness, thinking it would be enough to show them how much you cared. But somewhere along the way, they started taking your love for granted. They mistook your kindness for weakness and your silence for compliance. They thought they could push you, take from you, and manipulate you, and you would always stay, always be there, always tolerate their nonsense. But then something changed inside you. You began to see their true colors, the selfishness, the disrespect, the way they used you when it suited them, and left you in the shadows when it didn't. The moment you realized your worth, it hit you like a storm. You were never meant to be treated like that. You were never meant to be anyone's second choice, someone they only turned to when it was convenient for them. You were so much more than that. The hardest part wasn't walking away. The hardest part was realizing that you had to, because staying would have meant losing yourself completely. And so you left. You walked away with your heart in pieces, but your head held high. It hurt more than anything you'd ever felt, because you never imagined they'd be the ones to make you feel small. But in that pain, you found your strength. You found a version of yourself you didn't even know existed. A version that could rise above the hurt, the betrayal, and the broken promises. And they tried to replace you. They tried with all their might. They found others to fill the gaps you left, hoping that someone could provide what you had, hoping someone could give them the love and loyalty you so freely offered. But it never worked. It never felt the same. They tried to make it work, but no one could understand them the way you did. No one could love them like you did, with the same patience, the same depth, the same pure heart. They didn't realize, not until it was too late, that you were irreplaceable. Your kindness, your loyalty, your unwavering support, those weren't things that could be replicated. They thought they could move on easily, but the hole you left was too deep. They couldn't find anyone who could make them laugh like you did, who could hold them when they cried, who could listen without judgment and love without limits. And now, as they look at the emptiness around them, they know. They know they've lost something real. They know they've lost someone who cared not because it was convenient, but because they genuinely wanted the best for them. They didn't realize the value of what they had until it was gone. And now, they're left with regret, with guilt, with the crushing truth that they pushed away the one person who truly loved them. And no one can replace you. You've moved on, though. You've rebuilt yourself from the pieces they shattered. You found your peace, your worth, your strength again. You're no longer willing to tolerate the games, the lies, and the broken promises. You've learned that your love isn't something to be given freely to those who don't appreciate it. You've learned that you deserve someone who will match your energy, someone who will give you the same love, respect, and loyalty you give them. And as they sit in the wreckage of their own making, they'll never forget the truth. They tried their best, but they couldn't replace you. They'll never find someone who will love them the way you did, because no one will ever be able to see through their lies, to understand their deepest fears, to stand by them through the storms the way you did. You weren't just a chapter in their life. You were the foundation, the light that guided them when they were lost. And now, as they fumble through the pieces of their broken world, they will forever know one painful truth. You were irreplaceable, and they will never find anyone like you again. You were never just someone they could take for granted. You were a force, a presence they never truly understood until it was too late. The story begins like so many others, two people meeting, the excitement, the spark, the promise of something real. But little did you know that beneath all the smiles, the shared moments, and the laughter, they were already planning their escape. Not from you, but from the love and loyalty you offered so freely. You gave them everything. Every ounce of your love, your time, your trust. You believed in them so deeply that you didn't even question if they would do the same for you. Your heart opened without hesitation, without fear. You gave them all your strength and patience, thinking they would recognize how rare it was to have someone who cared the way you did. You didn't expect them to be perfect. After all, you weren't either. You just wanted them to appreciate what you offered and show you the same respect, the same effort in return. But over time it became clear, this wasn't how it was going to be. You were constantly there, trying to fix what was broken, picking up the pieces of their life that they couldn't handle. Yet despite your best efforts, they never saw it. They took your love as something they could walk all over, something they could use without consequence. At first, you thought it was just a phase. Everyone has their flaws, right? Everyone makes mistakes. Maybe they didn't mean to hurt you. But with every word, every action, it became harder to convince yourself that this wasn't the case. You began to notice how they used your kindness to manipulate you, how they took advantage of your patience, how they never really gave you the same in return. They would play games with your heart, making you feel like you were never enough. When they wanted your attention, they demanded it, but when you needed theirs, it was as if you were invisible. It wasn't the big things that broke you, it was the little things. The constant inconsistency, the broken promises, the empty apologies that never meant anything. You stayed because you wanted to believe that people could change. But there comes a point when even the most loving heart has to protect itself. You realized you were giving everything, and they were giving nothing. That was the moment you made the decision. You had to walk away. Leaving wasn't easy. It was the hardest thing you ever had to do because, despite everything, you still cared. You still wanted to believe in them. But deep down, you knew that staying would only hurt you more. You knew that you couldn't keep giving to someone who wasn't ready to give back. It wasn't about the love you had for them. It was about the respect you had for yourself. You chose yourself, and that was the moment everything changed. They didn't understand it at first. They thought they had all the time in the world. They thought you would always be there, waiting for them to come around. They thought they could play the same old games, manipulate you with their charm, with their empty promises, and you would always fall for it. But when you walked away, when you finally stopped tolerating their lies, their selfishness, their drama, it hit them like a ton of bricks. You were irreplaceable. They couldn't replace the comfort you gave them, the safety to love. No one would ever make them feel the way you did. No one would ever be as selfless, as patient, as understanding as you had been. At first, they tried to fill the emptiness you left behind. They found someone else, someone who pretended to be everything you were, someone who smiled at all the right moments, someone who said the right words. But it didn't work. No one could be you. No one could love them like you did, with the same depth, with the same unwavering support. They realized it too late after they'd pushed you away, after they'd ignored every sign that you were the one thing that kept them grounded. They tried their best. They really did. They told themselves they were fine. They told themselves they didn't need you. But deep down, they were lying to themselves. They had always depended on you, on your strength, on your wisdom, on the way you held everything together when the world seemed to be falling apart around them. They thought they could move on easily, that someone else could fill your place, but they were wrong. No one could replace the love, the bond, the understanding that you shared. Days turned into weeks and months. They started to feel it, the void you left behind. The emptiness that no one could fill, no matter how hard they tried. They tried to call, to message, to make excuses for their actions, hoping you would take them back. But you had already moved on. You had already rebuilt yourself. You were no longer the person they could walk all over. You were no longer waiting for their approval, for their affection. You had realized your worth. You had learned to love yourself first, to prioritize your peace, your happiness. And in doing so, you became more than they ever thought you could be. They sat there, staring at the empty spaces in their life. They looked at the people around them, the ones they thought would replace you, and saw nothing but shadows. They realized that no one could truly understand them the way you did. No one could hold them the way you did, with such tenderness and care. You were irreplaceable, and the realization hit them hard. But it wasn't just about them anymore. It wasn't just about them losing you. It was about you gaining something more precious than they could ever offer, yourself. Your freedom, your strength, your independence. You had broken free from the chains of their manipulation, from the toxicity of their lies, from the endless cycle of disappointment. You had stepped into your own light. You had learned to stand tall, to walk with your head held high, knowing that you deserved better, knowing that you deserved someone who could see you for who you truly were. And as time passed, they began to realize just how deeply they had failed to appreciate what they had in you. The love you gave, the sacrifices you made, the way you held their hand through the hardest times, it was all so real, so pure. They thought they could find someone to replace that, but the truth was, they were never going to find anyone like you. You had something they would never be able to replicate. You had a heart that was too big, too pure, too full of love to ever be replaced by the shallow relationships they tried to force themselves into. You weren't just a person in their life. You were the heart, the soul, the reason they felt like they could conquer anything. And now, without you, they were lost. But here's the beauty of it all. You didn't need them to realize this. You didn't need them to come crawling back to you, to apologize, to beg for your forgiveness. You didn't need any of that because you had already moved forward. You had already healed. You had already learned that your worth doesn't come from someone else's approval. Your worth is inherent. It's not tied to the people who try to use you, manipulate you, or control you. It's tied to your heart, your resilience, and the strength it took to walk away. They thought they could replace you. They thought they could move on without missing a beat. But no one can replace someone who is irreplaceable. No one can take the place of someone who loved with everything they had, who gave with no expectation in return. And now, as they sit in the ruins of their own mistakes, they will always know one thing. They tried their best, but they couldn't replace you. And that, in itself, is their punishment. Because the absence of someone like you is a loss they will never truly recover from. And as they look around trying to fill the void, they'll always remember, the only thing they could never replace was you, the beginning of trust. The world seemed simpler when they first met you. You were like a warm ray of sunlight breaking through their stormy skies. At that moment, they didn't know your worth. They couldn't have. How could anyone grasp the depth of a heart like yours at first glance? You walked into their life not as a savior, but as someone who quietly wanted to make things better. You didn't come in demanding attention or affection. You weren't like the others who flaunted their worth in loud, shallow ways. No, you were subtle, gentle in your ways, kind in your words, and genuine in every gesture. You brought laughter where there was silence, peace where there was chaos. They didn't see it then, but you were building bridges over their brokenness, stitching wounds they had long forgotten about. Slowly but surely, they began to lean on you. And you, with a heart so big it could hold the world's burdens, welcomed their flaws, their fears, their imperfections, as if they were treasures. But even in those early days, you could feel the cracks in the foundation. They didn't see you the way you saw them. For them, you were convenient, a constant source of comfort. They didn't notice the weight you were carrying, trying to hold everything together. Every time they stumbled, you were there to catch them, to guide them, to remind them that they were capable of greatness. You didn't do it because you wanted anything in return. You did it because you believed in them. But as time went on, the balance shifted. What began as a partnership slowly turned into a one-sided effort. You were giving everything, and they were giving nothing. Still, you held on. Because that's what love does, doesn't it? It hopes, it believes, it fights even when the odds are against it. The cracks begin to show. The moments that once brought you joy began to feel like obligations. The laughter you shared started to fade, replaced by long silences that spoke louder than words ever could. You tried to convince yourself that this was just a phase, that things would get better, that they would see how much you were giving, how much you were sacrificing. But deep down, a part of you knew the truth. They had started to take you for granted. They thought your love was endless, that no matter what they did or didn't do, you would always be there. And for a while, you proved them right. You stayed, you forgave. You gave them chance after chance, hoping that one day they would realize what they had in you. It wasn't the big things that broke you. It was the little ones. The forgotten promises, the dismissive tone, the way they would look past you as if you were invisible. They stopped saying thank you, stopped appreciating the effort you put into making their life easier, brighter. It was as if they had forgotten who you were, the person who had been there through their darkest days, the person who had seen them at their worst and loved them anyway. They started to drift, to pull away, and no matter how hard you tried to bridge the gap, it only seemed to widen. The more you gave, the less they seemed to care. And slowly, you began to feel the weight of their indifference. The breaking point, the day it all fell apart, wasn't marked by a grand argument or a dramatic betrayal. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic. You were sitting there, watching them scroll through their phone, completely oblivious to your presence. You realized in that moment that you were no longer a priority in their life. You were an afterthought, a convenience. They didn't see you, not really. And for the first time, you stopped seeing them through the rose-colored lens of love. You saw them for who they truly were, someone who didn't value you, who didn't deserve the love you had so freely given. The decision to leave wasn't easy. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. It was the result of countless sleepless nights, of tears shed in silence, of moments when you questioned your own worth. But in the end, you knew that staying would only break you further. You couldn't keep pouring your love into someone who refused to reciprocate. You couldn't keep giving to someone who only knew how to take. So with a heavy heart and trembling hands, you walked away. It was the hardest thing you had ever done, but it was also the most liberating. For the first time in a long time, you chose yourself. The realization, they didn't notice you were gone at first. They thought you were just angry that you would come back like you always did. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and slowly, the reality of your absence began to sink in. They tried to move on to replace you with someone else. But no one could fill the void you left behind. No one could make them feel the way you did. They realized too late that you weren't just another person in their life. You were the foundation, the glue that held everything together. They tried to reach out, to apologize, to make amends. But you had already moved forward. You had already started to heal. You had found peace in your own company, joy in your own journey. You didn't need their validation anymore. You didn't need their love. You had found something far more valuable, yourself. As they sat there, surrounded by the remnants of what once was, they were left to face the harsh truth. They had lost you. Not because you stopped loving them, but because they didn't know how to love you back. The irreplaceable you time has a way of revealing what truly matters. For you, it brought clarity and strength. For them, it brought regret and longing. They tried their best to replace you, to fill the void you left behind. But no matter how hard they tried, no one could take your place. You were unique, irreplaceable, one of a kind. The love you gave, the light you brought into their life, was something they would never find again. And that was their punishment, to live with the knowledge that they let go of the one person who truly loved them, who truly cared. They would spend the rest of their lives searching for what they had with you, but they would never find it, because people like you don't come around twice. People like you are rare, like shooting stars, like treasures buried deep in the earth. And while they were busy chasing fleeting pleasures, they lost the only thing that truly mattered, you. As for you, you didn't just survive, you thrived. You found happiness in the things they took for granted, in the small joys of life, in the beauty of your own strength. You learned that your worth isn't defined by someone else's inability to see it. You are enough, just as you are. And as they look back on the life they could have had with you, they will always remember one thing. They tried their best, but they couldn't replace you.